a little sparse. There are many, many Tuesdays between now and the end of the year. And we feel that everybody has a brown bag lunch in them somewhere. So, so please think about what you might have to offer. And I'm sure there will be people interested in that. And if you think that you'd like to do a brown bag lunch, please let us know. One thing that you need to worry about is that if a lot of people don't sign up, you're going to be hearing a lot from me. And so maybe that would be an incentive to get out there and find some interesting speakers for us, because we're always looking. So I want to turn the time over to Sue Mayberry. I know she has a wonderful program planned about Iowa Electric and the Hurstville Dam 100th anniversary. Sue Mayberry, thank you.
So I invited people to come that had a connection with this program. And glad to see Terry Bronson is here. His grandfather worked for Iowa Electric. And we have Deb Renner and her mother Marilyn. And Marilyn's father worked at the dam. And Bob Sheets wrote an article. And Marcella, who lived at the dam for a number of years because her husband was the plant manager. Is there anybody else that has a connection to Iowa Electric or the dam? Okay. This is the 100th anniversary of the Lakehurst Dam, which was completed in 1924. I wonder if the lights, if somebody could get the lights, I think it would show a little better. Shown is one of the earliest photos that I could find. Notice the Model Ts on the lower left. Iowa Electric Light and Power and the Lakehurst Dam. My father was employed for many years by Iowa Electric. His father, Lyman Marvin, a farmer and pioneer seed corn dealer from Spragueville, was instrumental in getting the rural areas of Jackson County electrified. And my father's job in the early years entailed installing the service to those rural homes. Managers from 7 eastern Iowa counties posed for the above picture when they met for a 3-day conference at Davenport to go over plans and specifications for their individual county rural electric cooperatives, prior to making formal application for long-term loans totaling more than $3 million from the federal government for construction of approximately 3,000 miles of electric transmission lines. Lyman Marvin, representing Jackson County, is seated on the far left. Another article lists Lyman as the county chairman of the rural electrification plans. He asked for a statement by the city council as to the possibility of obtaining electric current from the city in case the government plans for the project are carried out in the county. They said it would be necessary to have some idea as to the amount of service required before definite action could be taken. Iowa Electric, now Alliant Energy, began serving Maquoketa in 1915 when it purchased property of the Maquoketa Light and Power. Iowa Electric no longer owns the lines. Centennial Edition ad, Iowa Electric, we are at your service. Insert published in the Wall Street Journal, October 7, 1963, by utility and power companies. Why did you locate in Iowa? That's the key question we asked 30 of Iowa's industrial leaders. Shown are the companies that were listed, including Iowa Electric Light and Power Company. There's more, much more to Iowa than farms. There's highly skilled labor with exceptional productivity. The business climate is top. Raw materials are close at hand. Transportation facilities are excellent. There's an abundance of water. Best of all, there's the native know-how of Iowa's people. There's room to grow in Iowa, and always plenty of power. Iowa's much more than the greatest farm state. She's come of age industrially. As diversified industry has grown in the state of Iowa, the people have become skilled in the diversification 5 industries which prosper here. Iowans are proud of their heritage of hard work, industry, and the farmer who dressed the land from wilderness to become the world's top agricultural producer. These big names in industry will tell you why Iowa and Iowans make them happy to be a part of Iowa's industrial scene. Why being a farm state has helped Iowa become an industrial state as well. Big names pictured on this page included Donald C. Serb. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. The availability of skilled personnel, convenient transportation and utilities, and progressive communities, which make possible highly successful industrial operations, have attracted us to expand our operations and consolidate in Iowa. Quoted by Donald C. Serb, President, Clinton Engines Corporation. During its first 100 years, Iowa Electric pioneered advanced concepts in utility operations, rate structures, generation, and transmission systems. It was one of the first American utilities to adopt alternating current, which later became the industry-wide standard, and to sell electricity by the meter. 1938 article. The Iowa Electric Company was established in Maquoketa in 1915 when it purchased the Maquoketa Light and Power Company's plant here. An additional unit was added to the steam plant, and a high line was built to connect Maquoketa with Anamosa and Cedar Rapids generating plants. Since that time, more lines to the south have been installed, giving service into Maquoketa from 2 directions. The first local manager of the company was Ben Mowry, who was followed by J.E. Anderson. Gene Moore, present manager as of 1938, took charge on June 1st, 1930, and continued as manager until January 1st, 1951. Ben Ritter Mowry was born about 1885 in Pennsylvania. The 1910 census shows he was a boarder in Indiana and was a superintendent at a light plant at age 25. In the 1925 census, he was age 40, married, and living with his wife May and his daughter Ruth. This article was written by Bob Sheets. Bob is a retired state wildlife biologist who resides in rural Maquoketa with his wife Ruth. And again, I mentioned Bob's in the audience here today. The idea of a hydro-powered dam near Maquoketa came about several years after electrical power was brought to Maquoketa from the 1899 Barnes Brothers Klondike Dam, 5 miles east of Maquoketa. Klondike was a wooden apron dam that supplied limited drop in river level and limited power to its customers. 12 years after its construction, a flood broke through and destroyed the dam in 1911. The thought of a taller, more reliable dam near Maquoketa began swirling in the heads of landowner Alfred Hurst and several investors. And in 1903, the Maquoketa Hydroelectric Company was formed. There was friction to be overcome during the planning period, and there were thorny equity settlements to be made with farmers whose land would be affected by this overflow. In 1954, Lakehurst was Iowa's second largest dam, the largest being the Mississippi Dam at Keokuk. To build Lakehurst, 7,050 cement blocks, 5,274 cubic yards of crushed rock were used, and to this 1,700 cubic yards of sand, 200 tons of steel, 18,000 cubic yards of dirt for the dike, and 20,000 feet of piling. And you get the idea of the multitude of this job. The dam is 176 feet wide and 450 feet long. bed of the lake formed is around 600 feet. The depth of the face is 25 feet. The high water goes back upstream some 8 miles. Altogether, some 487 acres of land were purchased for overflowage. There were 6 steel gates, 5 of them mechanically operated, and the 6th, intended for use in case of power breakdowns, was manually operated. Shown is the Lakehurst Dam ownership history, beginning with William Hurst in 1899. So he transferred it to Alfred. 1903, it was transferred from Hearst to the Maquoketa Hydro Electric Company, then transferred to Eastern Iowa Power Company, then to Iowa Electric Company, 1953 to Iowa Electric Light and Power Company, and in 2005, it was purchased by North American Hydro, located in Wisconsin. 2012, the owners of the North America Hydro changed their name to World Renewable Resources. Phil Owen, is Phil in the audience today? Okay. He was working on this presentation as well, and so he did give me a lot of information. He explained to me how the dams were standalone, and once rural people got electricity, they wanted something more dependable, which is why they preferred electricity on a grid. Electricity on a grid has to be synchronized. Waveforms must align and stay aligned to access power from the grid. The Delco plants used by some in the rural areas were not large enough to power a city. Pinhook, now known as Lakehurst, was the site of several early day mills. Later it was part of the extension Hearst Lime Works. Logs were waded across the river in line with the river current, which stabilized rock fill on the upstream side and allowed wagon trains to cross, wagon teams to cross. This primitive Pinhook Dam, constructed of logs and rock, had been replaced with a modern structure of steel, cement, and stone. Pinhook derived its name in the late 1800s from a local fisherman who used a bent pin for his fishing hook. Years ago, this dam and the Klondike Dam were the scene of many a picnic in river steamer days. The investors soon sold their land purchase from Hearst to Eastern Iowa Power Company on February 22, 1923. Iowa Electric formed the Maquoketa Hydroelectric Power Company with an authorized capital of $100,000. The president of this organization was A.A. Hearst. The board was composed mainly of local men. The citizens were given the first opportunity to subscribe, and the project was widely advertised. And on March 30th, 1923, bids for construction were sought. The new power company awarded a $230,000 contract for earth and fill and concrete dam construction to an out-of-town contractor, the Price Brothers. Locally recruited labor was used as far as possible, and work began toward a contract completion date of January 15, 1924. History indicates that initial packing on the earthen dam may have been less than perfect. Heavy runoff in the 959 square mile Maquoketa River watershed occurred in the spring of 1927, and at 9:30 p.m. on June 1st, a large blowout occurred in the earthen dam just north of the northernmost water gate. Repairs began immediately. Gates were shut, and the pool began to refill on September 9, 1927. All went well until manager John Hammerand and his crew detected a large hole beneath the concrete gates on January 21, 1931. The river pool was immediately lowered and the hole was repaired by April 5th of the same year. Abe Hearst's dance pavilion is shown in this photo. The beautiful reservoir above the dam inspired power company worker Jack Martin and a local machinist, Mr. Farnsworth, to build a large wooden boat slide off the south bluff. Lakehurst shown as it appeared during the 1930s. Shown is a picture of Jack Martin taken with his sister Louise Mayoffy in his later years. Jack Martin's Shoot the Chute is shown as it operated from 1935 to 1937. People came from miles around to watch brave souls climb into the large wooden box-like boat. An electric winch run by Mr. Farnsworth would pull the boat filled with people to the top of a platform constructed 30 feet above the top of a 70-foot bluff. Then Martin would smack a well-greased straw pin on the boat with a big wooden mallet. Immediately, the boat and its load of screaming passengers would fly down the rails, developing breakneck speed as it careened down the 200-foot-long slide, hit the water, and shoot out across the Lakehurst pool. Legend has it that Martin became so comfortable taking his boatloads of daredevils that he would stand in the back of the boat, smoking a cigar, all the way down the chute. So I was trying to figure out who this Mr. Farnsworth was. And I guess I didn't realize when I was trying to figure it out just really how old he was. So at first I totally missed it. But I've had these Farnsworth pictures at my home for quite a few years since somebody dropped off at the store. My husband doesn't remember who gave them to him. And then I knew that there was a Farnsworth on his side of the family. So I finally figured it out, who he is. So Frederick Lyman Farnsworth was born in Wisconsin to George and Elizabeth Farnsworth, and they are buried in Makokada. Frederick attended school only through 4th grade and was a carpenter and later a machinist. He would have been over 77 years old when operating the Shoot the Chute. So I'm wondering if that, was electric, that winch that he's pulling that, it just seemed like it would be hard to do that at that age. So here's where it gets interesting. His son, Eugene Byron, married my great aunt, Grace Frederica Brown. His other son, Leroy R., married my husband's great aunt, Clement Rimmer. So our two great aunts were sister-in-laws. Photo shows 3 of Frederick's grandchildren, which are my aunt's children. So anyway, I just was surprised to find that. An upstream landowner, Finney Dell, and later his son Harlan, developed a popular campground and beach used by hundreds of people each weekend. Diving platforms, canoe rentals, a groomed swimming beach, and rental cabins were located at the Black Hawk Dells campgrounds for many years. Their venture in the campgrounds was apparently a financial success. 1943, class reunion scheduled for June at Lakehurst. Another article stated, by 1955, Pinnock was rarely spoken of. The locality was now known as Lakehurst, but the Riverview Country Club and Lakehurst Dance Pavilion were things of the past. The proposed Riverview Park on land donated by A.A. Hearst never fully materialized. But the dam, now 30 years old, seems to be good for eternity. And until I started doing this program, I didn't make that connection, Lakehurst, that it had to do with the hearse. I just never made that connection before. How many of you knew that already? Okay, so I wasn't in the minority. Way back when, May 21st, 1954, 30 years ago, first boat regatta on the beautiful Makokada River will be held Sunday afternoon, when the Edgewater fleet, owned by Chris Werner, and the fleet of the Lakehurst Boat Club will assemble at Lakehurst, and a grand parade of craft will be held. Mr. Werner has engaged a band and an array of singers. 30 years ago, and this was in the 1954 edition. 26 Civil War veterans and 100 Women's Relief Corps members met at the country club for their annual picnic. 1954, Baldwin class holds reunion at Lakehurst. Anybody here from the 54 class? Area Kids Halloween party set. Co-chairman Henry Cope and Ray Agnich report final plans have been made for the event. Eats, refreshments, movies, and fun will be the order of the evening. The Kirchhoff Ice Cream Company, the Royal Crown Bottling Company, and Maquoketa Bottling Works will furnish the ice cream and pop. Years passed, and then the flood of 1937 came along. On March 8th, the earthen dam just south of the powerhouse began to fail. Many residents raced to the side and clambered out onto the south bluff just in time to watch the dam wash out at 11 a.m. The blowout took the south half of the powerhouse and undercut the porch on the old Hearst home, which had been occupied by the Hammerans. Photo shows close-up of the Lakehurst dam break. Frank Rayner, local concrete vault manufacturer, came to the scene with the only bulldozer to be found. He cribbed up the Hearst home and is relocated to Maquoketa. And then just kind of a sad note here on Frank. Frank Stephen Rayner was married to Nellie Esther Cruz. She died on October 9, 1915 at age 26, a day after her baby girl died. At the time of her death, her son Franklin was 4 and her daughter Harriet was 1. Daughter Harriet married Marvin Copus and they lived in Bellevue. And I do not believe he ever remarried after the loss of his wife at that young age. Maquoketa Electric Plant during the 1937 flood. Coffer Dam construction, built to recover material, began on August 4th of the same year to repair and redesign the dam. Red Henton, shown in photo, and his brother helped haul, mix, and lay brick and mortar for the repair of the powerhouse. On October 23, 1937, new franchise voted for Iowa Electric Company, and the south wall of the powerhouse had been enclosed. Leaving only 2 generators and a new stop wall was built, leading the powerhouse back to the south bluff. The stop log bays allowed plant managers to increase water passage during high flows and flush accumulating silt near the powerhouse intakes. Jack Martin helped direct open-top Model A dump trucks that were used to recover material from downstream and bring in new fill. In 1939, modifications and repairs were completed by the Midland Construction Company of Chicago. February 2nd, 1940, the generators were restarted again. For 10 years, the hydro dam flourished. 4th of July celebrations were held in and around the Dance Hall Pavilion, immediately below Lakehurst. 4,000 to 5,000 people would gather to watch boxing matches or listen to famous bands. An open dance floor and boxing ring were erected and fireworks were shot off the North River bank. Longtime resident Ed Seeberger, brother of Mrs. Asher Schrader, recalled famous farm radio announcers coming to the celebration with their predictions for the farm economy. On May 28, 1942, ownership of the dam was refranchised to the Iowa Electric Company. When the Irvin Lewis family moved to town, the article stated, all of the family, in fact, like winter sports. The reporter suggested that they try the hills around Lakehurst, where you can ski down onto the lake. Mr. Lewis, new manager of the National Tea, came to Maquoketa in March. For sale, a dandy cabin with all equipment, including a good 14-foot boat, all located up the lake from Lakehurst. Wonderful location. Let's talk about this. John L. Jones, realtor. As members of the Bud Sandlin family were planning their vacation to Colorado, it was carefully explained to the youngest they were going for a long, long car ride. Later they heard David singing, "We're going to Lakehurst, we're going to Lakehurst." Lakehurst will celebrate its 11th anniversary Sunday, July 21st, 1935, with a free program, including a concert by the 65-piece Lost Nation Band. Now I wondered why they skipped over the 10th reunion. So did it have something to do with world affairs? Does anybody know? I mean, in the summer of 1934 was when Hitler executed all of those people, his friends and foes alike. And in 1933, a quarter of the people were out of work in Roosevelt's New Deal. Does anybody know why that wasn't celebrated on the 10th year? For sure? Okay. The Maquoketa Police Department will sponsor a dance at Lakehurst. Tickets are on sale at Real Cigar Store and at the Employees Independent Labor Union Cafeteria at Clinton Machine Company. They may also be purchased from the local police force. 1955, Lakehurst will no longer be generally available for social functions. The district officials report. Does anyone know why they did that? Okay. Lost. Tackle box at Lakehurst. Reward. 1995, LDS schedules workday project at Lakehurst. The LDS Church District recently purchased Lakehurst for use as a meeting place. Good cabin at Lakehurst, only $575. Don F. Nissen, salesman. Lakehurst hydropower plant managers were John Hammeran from 1924 to 1960. John was born in 1902 and married Hilda Emma, not sure how to say this name, Gannap, in 1924. And they were the parents of Margaret and May. Margaret was married to Ed Beidler. Their grandson, Keeter Beidler, told me that they loved to fish, and his grandfather also trapped. They raised a cow and a pig and had a large garden while they lived at Lakehurst. The plant managers monitored the water levels and would open the gates by either raising or lowering them. They also kept the stats on the turbines. The power unit at Lakehurst consisted of 2 James Leffel turbines, which driving General Electric 750 kVA generators were capable of putting out 27,000 kilowatts per day. The engineer's estimate of production capacity was an average of 3,400,000 kilowatts per year. Actual production was considerably higher. John Hammeran recalled that during some years the figure had reached 7 million. Delbert Wolf was plant manager from 1959 to 1984. Prior to that, he operated a diesel plant in DeWitt. He was born on May 2nd, 1929, the son of Elmer and Ella Wolf. Delbert had 2 brothers, one was Sliver Wolf, and 1 sister. His dad was planting corn while there were snow flurries on the day he was born, and again, that was May 2nd. Delbert married Beverly Rathman. Any relation to your Rathmans, Don? Okay. In 1954, and were the parents of 3 children, Lori, Amy, and Jay. Pictures taken September 27, 1968 on left, Beverly, Jay, and Amy, and on right, Jay and Amy. You can hear their band a-strumming. You can hear the boys a-humming. Who? None other than the Southland's famous 7 aces, all 11 of them. The large meteor, which fell last week, and this was 1959, proved to be an exceedingly bright one. It was witnessed by many of our citizens, and some of the people voting on Lakehurst claimed that the brilliancy of it made it possible to read a newspaper. Has anyone had heard about that before? We took special note of the license plates on the cars which brought visitors to Lakehurst last Sunday, and that was in 1959. We found 14 Iowa counties were represented in 7 different states. Lost at Lakehurst, a Johnson citation reel and 3-piece 5-foot glass rod. Reward. What would something like that have cost and worth? John Hammeran died at age 57. Hilda B. Hammeran, widow of the late John W. Hammeran, will sell personal property on the premises at Lakehurst. Vern Hoot will be the auctioneer and the Maquoketa State Bank clerk. I talked to Clear Byler, the grandson, last week, and he was going to get me some photos by Sunday. About an hour and a half ago, he called me, and he had the photos. So he doesn't know for sure if this is his grandfather. So I put him up there in case anybody knows. But he thinks they are, but he doesn't know for sure. And then there'll be another of his pictures here in a minute. Mrs. Hammeran has moved from Lakehurst to 614 West Platte Street. Mr. and Mrs. Delbert Wolf moved from DeWitt to the home just vacated by Mrs. Hammeran. July 31st, 1962, the dam was shut down awaiting installation of new turbines. December 1st, 1962, number 1 generator started up with new runner. January 7th, 1963, number 2 generator started up with new runner. So I'm just wondering how they generated power, in between the times those were shut down. These are the other pictures that Clear sent. And so I asked him, what that was, and he said it was when they had the ice storm. I don't know what year. I can't really quite make out what that is, for sure. And then this one he sent as well. And it kind of looks like there's maybe ice there. 1963 Iowa Electric pamphlet. The following information was obtained from this pamphlet. Hydro plant employees at Maquoketa are Harvey Allison and Delbert Wolf with the beautiful Maquoketa County background. Harvey Allison first attended Buckhorn School. And it would have looked different, right, when he attended. He was born November 20th, 1904 in Jackson County and died October 15th, 1979. Harvey married Alice Worcester, shown in this photo from he married her in 1930. In 1940, he was working as a farmer, married with 2 young daughters. Alice was a school teacher prior to her marriage. She played the piano and the fiddle and encouraged her granddaughters to take music lessons. Harvey was 45 years old when he gave up farming, moved to town, and became an Iowa Electric employee, where he worked for 20 years, first with John Hammeran and later with Del Wolf. Harvey's daughter, Marilyn Franzen, who is here today, explained how John's work was very physical. Among other duties, he did all the mowing, no riding lawnmower used. The grounds were meticulously maintained to perfection by Harvey, as shown in the next 4 photos. This one, he put a notation on the back, Beverly Squash. Harvey's pickup. I love that picture. Employee Ralph Spittler on the dam, looking at the high water in August of 1968. Ralph was born in Iowa in about 1910. He served in the U.S. Army from 1942 to 1945. The 1950 census showed he was an auto mechanic who had never married. Substation shown with Ralph's car and Harvey's truck. Photo of the August 1968 flood. Larry Henneke was plant manager from 1972 to 1997. Larry, son of Laverne and Mildred Henneke, was a 1956 Maquoketa High School graduate. He married Marcella Barton in 1960 at Andrew Presbyterian Church, and to this union, daughter Dina was born. Larry served in the Army Reserves from 1957 to 1964. He assumed full management of Lakehurst Dam September 1984 and moved the family to the home at the dam site. Larry passed away in 2021 at age 82. Larry is shown standing on the bridge that goes up to the house and dam. The ice had taken out the railings. Another photo showing the ice, and this is from the same day. The office department at Iowa Electric was handled by, from left, Gertrude Goodnow, Pat Hurley, Anna Rankin, John Blossfield, salesman, Don Wolf, serviceman, and Marvin Wise, meter reader. John Welch, serviceman, and Teresa Welch, janitress, were not present when the photo was taken. Charlene Pat Hamilton Hurley was born in Maquoketa and was the wife of Floyd Hurley. She was the office manager for 32 years at Iowa Electric Light and Power Company. 1950 census shows Anna Rankin was an inspector of Bates, working in a factory. Her husband owned his own business in the plumbing heating industry. Kenneth R. Rankin had served in the Navy from 1944 to 1945. George E. Goodnow, Jr., son of Frederick B. and Julia Van Horn Goodnow, portrayed a settler during Maquoketa's centennial celebration. George was an avid fisherman, and Gertie was always sewing or doing needlepoint work. They were married in 1941 in Bellevue and lived along the Mississippi. Shown is a picture of George, pipe in hand, testing out a Clinton engine on the Mississippi. George owned and operated the Diamond Super Service Station, located on the southeast corner of Platte and Madison. John Joseph Jack Blossville was born in Spragueville in 1933 and grew up in the Preston area. He graduated from Maquoketa High School in 1953 and joined the Army shortly thereafter. He served overseas in Europe during the Reconstruction after World War II. After his discharge, he returned to attend the University of Iowa, where he met his future wife, Mary Ann Weno. Jack and Mary Ann were the parents of 6 children, 5 girls and 1 boy. Jack spent most of his career working in sales for the utility equipment company of Bettendorf. Don Sliverwolf was born in Calamus in 1925. His wife, Arlene Doslin Wolf, shown in photo, was born in Welton. They were the parents of Greg, Julia, and Tina. Sliver worked for Iowa Electric Light and Power Company for 35 years, retiring in 1984. He also worked as a paramedic at the Jackson County Public Hospital, part-time for 18 years. He enjoyed doing volunteer for the Jackson County Historical Society. Shown in photo are Marvin and Doris Wise. Doris was a 1945 graduate of Maquoketa High School. Marvin, born in Springbrook, was the son of Edwin and Loretta Yeager Wise. John Eggerstadt Welch was born in Hurstville. He served in Korea with the Air Force. His wife, Teresa May Rollinger, shown in photo, was born in Bernard. John and Teresa, who married in 1955, were the parents of Christine, Kathy, and Ken. 1963 photograph of the line department crew at Maquoketa from left. Larry Temple, John Blaine, Alvin Casemedel, Forrest Bronson, Glenn Clark, and George Marvin, shown in front of one of the company's installations. The office where my dad worked was located on the corner of East Platt and Clark Street, now the home of the FSA building. And I remember they used to play cards there. It seemed like a lot. And my mom would load us all up and come down and tell him it was time to come home. You know, supper was waiting. Larry Robert Temple was born in Nebraska, and his wife, Donna Jean Lind, was born in Clinton. They were the parents of Diane and Denise. John Ted Blaine was a World War II Army veteran, serving in the Asiatic Pacific Theater with 1 bronze battle star for the New Guinea Papuan campaign. From Ted's obituary, Ted had a long career in the utility field, first working as a construction lineman, bringing power to people in rural areas for the first time. Later, he worked for Iowa Light and Power, retiring after 25 years as a lineman, and a gas and electrical serviceman. John and Martell were the parents of John, Brenda, and Jill. Alvin Henry Case-Medell was married to Doris Lyon Ruddy. They were both natives of Minnesota. Alvin and Dolores were the parents of Susan, Ronald, Lynette, Edward, Lynn, and Leanne. And I think there might have been 2 sets of twins there. Forrest W. Bronson and his wife, Christiane B. Bronson, were the parents of Johnny Leroy Bronson, who is Terry's father. And every year I make... Oh, and your father. Okay. And every year I make Christie's sugar cookies. That was in Mom's recipe book. Glenn Clark was married to Mickey. They were the parents of Lola and Andy. So when we rescued Butler No. 5 Schoolhouse from Bernard in the mid-90s, my dad was able to arrange all of his buddies to lift those wires up and to his new location, which is the Buzzard, near the Buzzard Ridge Wildlife Area. You can't see it anymore. All the trees, plantings that we did, it's just too tall. Delbert Wolf taking a picture of a tree under the gate. Photos shown of Jerry Miller, truck driver, Alan Case-Medell, lineman, and Delbert Wolf. They pulled a log out from under floodgate on Friday, September 27, 1968. Ann and George were the parents of myself, my sister Barb, and my brothers Don and Kevin. Marilyn Franzen told me about a time when my dad called her after he did a repair, and he said, "Marilyn, the line is fixed. You can warm the baby's milk now." Power problems. This serviceman announced his retirement. While I'm fishing and living it up, for service, call Mount Vernon. And at night, call Cedar Rapids. So that reminded me of a time when I was home alone with my dad. We got a trouble call, as we called him. And I went along. And it was kind of scary. The ditches seemed like they were 500 feet deep, and I hung on for dear life the whole time. And then I sat there while he climbed the pole in the rain and did what needed to be done. Never went on another call again. The specialized field of linemen began with the installation of widespread telegraph use during the 1840s. Originally, telegraph lines would be strung on trees along a straight path. But the lack of trees made it necessary to erect wooden poles for that purpose. People who set the poles in line and strung up the wire were soon referred to as linemen, and that name stuck. The widespread use of electricity made this job much more hazardous than work on telegraph or telephone lines because of the increased risk of electrocution. Before safety standards were implemented, nearly half of the linemen were killed on the job. Some of the deaths were due to falls or other accidents, but the majority were from electrical shock. Shown is a photo of my dad that appeared in the paper July 19, 1973. George Marvin, an Iowa Electric lineman, works quickly to remove threatened power lines crossing over the fire that were in danger of burning through, as smoke from the fire clouds the sky behind him. The lines were down throughout the fire, but by 11 p.m., both city and Iowa Electric power had been restored to affected areas. The blaze destroyed 2 downtown buildings. All that remained of the Ringlet Hardware Warehouse was a pile of burning rubble. The fire was believed to have originated at the rear of the store, either in that building or in the Mitchell Master building adjacent to it. Then Jacobson looked on helplessly as his warehouse went up in flames. So we called it the trouble call phone in both houses as I was growing up. And my youngest brother remembers it, so it was there the whole time until my dad retired. And I still don't understand the whole deal with this phone, because it would, anytime there was a storm, I mean, anytime there was a storm anywhere, not just Makokata, that phone would ring. And that was back at the time where you had to pick up the phone or it would ring forever. And so my mom would pull up a chair and sit in the hallway and answer this phone. And so and it really kind of kept me up at night. I was talking to my brother about it. He goes, I don't remember that. He had a bedroom in the basement at both houses. But my recollection is that then she took the information and then called Cedar Rapids. Well, my sister said the phone didn't have dials on it. She thinks that she just gave them the number. And so I'm thinking, why was that phone there? Why wasn't there like an answer machine that said, call this number? It just was so strange. But my mom did this for, I guess, the whole time he worked, 30-some years. Answered that phone. My father took an early retirement. In 1976, he had open heart surgery and had a pacemaker installed. He could no longer be around electrical fields. Shortly thereafter, electric employee John Kozak had a fatal accident caused by electrocution. He was only 38 years old. He had bypassed a circuit up on a pole, and the clip came loose and probably touched him in the head, causing his death. He died in August of 1977. He and his wife, Karis Kettleson Kozak, were the parents of Jane and Ann. Carl Frederick Babe Jacobs, district commercial manager for Makokata, in the 1960s was married to Estella Marie Wells. Any relation to Bonnie? Ray Agnich of Makokata began working for Iowa Electric on June 20th, 1938, in the operating department. Born in Wyoming, Iowa, Ray was the son of Frank and Josephine Agnich. He served as a sergeant in the U.S. Army. Many of the photos shown in this presentation were taken by Harvey Allison, Marilyn's father. Harvey took this picture of the substation in 1968. More of his pictures to follow. And I really thought this was going to be the presentation where I didn't have too many slides, but these are just too great not to put in. The Buckner home, as seen from Lakehurst. Storehouse, nightclub, dike, switchboard inside the plant. Inside the plant, seeing the coat racks there, and their boots. Photo shows where the fire started on generator in January of 1968. And again, the generator that caught fire. Ralph Spittler resting after cleaning up after the fire. Del Wolf cleaning up after the fire. More cleaning and more cleaning. Picture shows where fire originated in 1968 on generator 1. After the fire, newspaper article captioned, "Dense, choking smoke from Wednesday's fire filled the Iowa Electric Lakehurst plant." Delbert Wolf said a liquid cleaner had ignited and it had did $5,000 to $10,000 damage. Photos taken of high water, August 1968. The gates are open in this photo. Ralph Spittler is on the dike. Spittler. Spittler. Silt and debris shown. August 1968, flood photos. And again, I believe these were all taken by Harvey Allison. This one on the back said, dead hog found in rubbish at dam. I don't know. I'm not sure I can tell where the dead hog is. Maybe if it wasn't a black and white picture. Water down, gates open, notice mud bank on the right. Log under gate after flood, and this was a big log. 3 gates open to get river down, 2 logs under gate. And I don't know if those are 2 different logs or the same, a picture of the same one. Gates open. Flood, July 20th, 1969. See people standing on the banks. Carloads of people lined up to see the flood. Bridge at Lakehurst underwater during the flood. They had to use a boat to get across. Generator number 1. Generator number 2. The chain hoists used to lift out lower turbine at the plant. Shown lowering of the turbine. Part of lower turbine being fixed. I don't know, maybe that makes sense to some of you. I can't quite figure out what's being done there. Smoke and fire damage, number 2 generator, June 1970. Del Wolf, Maquoketa Hydro Plant engineer, has his 25-year service pin fixed by wife Bev. Anamosa District Production Manager Bob Eady is to the left. Delbert retired in 1984 after 33 years working for Iowa Electric. After retirement, he moved to Washington and later to Yuma, Arizona, where he volunteered at the food bank and Crossroads mission for many years. Over the years, he owned 30 Corvairs, and in 2018, he bought a Tesla.
So he just died a couple months ago.
And he just died a couple months ago. Yeah, I think I've got some more slides about that. And he so wanted to be here for the 100th anniversary. So, George Marvin was honored at a retirement coffee on June 30th, 1977. He started as groundsman in Maquoketa, became lineman apprentice later in 52, combination man in 56, lineman in 57, and line foreman in 58. Prior to his employment with Iowa Electric, he was an electrician's mate for 6 years in the Navy. And here's some of the Ready Kilowatt advertising items. A calendar, bicycle license plate, Kids Safety Club badges. Anybody have one of those? Safety was a big concern. This badge reads, "Remember kids, electricity will kill you," and shows Ready Kilowatt with a knife ready to stab a child. That kind of seems a little horrifying, but maybe that helped save some lives, so it's a good thing. Electric companies were trying to win over gas companies with these advertising items. Here's a read your own meter card. Anybody do one of those? Remember filling those out? This electric bill is from 1956 for $3.31. I'd like to have that bill now. 1958, that one's for $19.99. There were many Lakehurst postcards printed. and this one from the 40s when the pavilion was still standing. Iowa Electric used print ads to promote electric use. You could plug in your Maytag or your washer now. With your help, Congress can and will resist those who want a federal monopoly of electricity. You don't want extravagance, and you don't want the threat of socialism. No more hot water worries for me. Little engines big in Makokada. So this was also in the pamphlet, and it talked about how Clinton Engines had 1,500 employees, and the big fire of 1882 in our business district resulted the following year in the Municipal Water Works and Volunteer Firefighting Company. This data compiled by the National Hydro Power Association. Iowa has a total of 10 powered dams. And those are listed. There's still a dam in Monticello, which is non-operating, and it's owned by the DNR. And Phil Owen told me that they wanted to blow it up, but the state wouldn't let them. The naturalists really are not a fan of dams because they interfere with the fish flow. Lakehurst Dam remains the tallest drop among all the hydro dams left in Iowa. And then this one was in 1979, and Delbert Wolf talked about seeing 50 cars parked out sometimes there at times. And then he said, as the only full-time employee at Lakehurst, he just didn't have enough time for fishing anymore. I thought that was kind of sad. Makokada voters on Wednesday, and this was in 80 years, way back when, 80 years ago, approved by a 2-to-1 margin the renewal of the 20-year franchise with Iowa Electric. Last slide. So Phil Owen explained to me that eventually hydropower will cease to exist. He predicts solar will be a good alternative, and also wind. And then he lent me this gadget, which is over here, on how electricity is made. So you can come up later and see it, but I'm not really sure I understand how to explain it. And I do have some other artifacts up here. Does anybody have any questions?
Iowa Electric get Makokada municipal, like we take over Iowa,
It's in this presentation, but I don't know off the top of my head because of all those numbers. But I can get that to you. But it was on one of the slides. I don't know when. I don't remember.
You know, you mentioned Albert Wolf liked Corvairs. Well, he bought a white Corvair of mine.
He did.
Yes, he did. And you know, and every time I talked to somebody in my relation and said, you got rid of a Corvair, you should have kept it.
Should have kept it.
But we bought a brown one from him. And it went back up very well. So we didn't keep it very long.
Yeah. And my husband said maybe that's why he didn't have time for fishing, really, because he was always working on his Corvairs.
You said you could go back for names.
Oh, you've got some pictures.
I just got the one with the picture that you
Oh,
showed.
yeah, that's the one that
But
just added there.
I didn't have the names.
I didn't.
Oh,
We didn't have
well, I
all
can
the
get you the
names.
names,
I
sure.
got George's grandpa.
Yeah, so that's where the temple. And I'll write this down there. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it.